Good to have you guys here. Today we are going to be talking about trad advice and how terrible and deluded a lot of trad advice is. Before we get into it though, do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We need to get up to 100 subscribers ASAP. We've got a bunch of people in already who've joined since we launched this channel just a couple of days ago. So thank you very much to you. As I say, if you haven't subscribed, do so. Do like the videos, do share the videos, hit the notifications button as well so you get informed when we're doing a new stream or when a new video is going up, so you keep up to date with all of the world-class information here. If you don't know me, I am a dating coach. I've been a dating coach for the past decade, more than a decade. I've helped thousands of guys all over the planet to improve their dating lives, both by working with them in person and also teaching them online as well. This channel is dedicated to getting to the bottom of what the hell is going on with modern dating and trying to figure out if there are any answers to this stuff, because it's pretty tough out there. If you've seen the last few streams that I've done, we've been talking about, you know, the difficulties of the dating environment for men predominantly, but also for women as well. It's not a ride in the park for women either. And we're just trying to figure out, okay, so what can we do? How can we help this situation? Shining some light on some of the difficulties and trying to get through this quagmire. So if you are a guy and you are looking to improve your dating life, then you are in the right place. And if you are a woman and you are looking to get better results or kind of find the right kind of person that you can actually form a relationship with, then you are also in the right place. And also, I should say, if you are interested in coming on the show and discussing a specific dating issue that you have with me and getting some advice from me about that, then drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or you can DM me on Instagram or on Twitter. My handle is @realtroyfrancis on both of those. That link is below. And we can set something up, okay? Because it would be a pleasure to have you on here. During this stream, if you've got any comments or questions, put them into the chat and I'll deal with them as we go through. Right, so without further ado, let's get into this, because there are a lot of people, guys, called Tradcons out there, traditional conservatives, and as the name suggests, they hold pretty traditional views on dating and marriage and the purpose of marriage and when you should get married and all that kind of good stuff. And generally speaking, overall, the advice is get married, find someone incredibly young. Not they're incredibly young, you're incredibly young. They're probably young as well. Get married as quickly as possible, and that's it, really. That's kind of fundamentally what they advise. And anything else is seen as degeneracy and fornication and blah, blah, blah. Now, listen, I'm in my 40s, right, and I'm unmarried. I don't have kids. That is through choice, okay? Obviously, you know, there have been opportunities along the way for me to get married. And when you go out there, when you look around, actually the bar for marriages is pretty damn low, okay? I'm not being rude, okay? Well, maybe I am a little bit. But you go out there, you walk around, you see the kinds of people that are out and about, you know? If you're in the street, if you're in the supermarket, if you venture to IKEA on the weekends or something like that, right? Look around, look at the couples around you. We are not talking, we are not talking male models, squiring, beautiful, Victoria's Secret style ladies. We are talking the rank and file of the population, okay? The truth of the matter is most people do end up getting married. Most people do end up either at least in a long-term relationship, but still the stats show most people do end up getting married. It's actually a pretty low bar. The reason it's a low bar is because by the time women get to the point of wanting to get married, which tends to be now in their 30s and even into their late 30s, they are aware that their options are probably narrower than maybe when they were in their 20s, okay? We talked about this yesterday. So the woman is going to be ready to accept less from the guy that she's going to marry, ironically, than she would from a short-term sexual partner. It sounds kind of crazy, but when you think about the kind of guys normally who want to get married, they are probably going to be the guys who themselves feel that they don't have so many options in the dating marketplace, okay? Because to put it very crudely, if you think that this one woman is probably the best you're ever going to get, and you're not going to be able to achieve you're not going to be able to get anybody else, your scarcity is very high, then it would make sense for you in that situation to seek to lock down that relationship, to formalize that relationship, to make it contractual, i.e. to get married. If you think about the elite level, the imaginary, notional elite level player who basically, has options coming out of his ears, he's got girls hitting him up day and night, asking him for casual flings and so on, why would that guy lock himself down, right? Just think of this notional guy. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is always the example that gets used and is a good example, but just think of this notional high-level elite player type dude who, he's not worried about where the next attractive woman is going to come from. Okay, so why would he, given that men's sexual strategy, broadly speaking, is to spread their seed, is to, have sex with as many women as possible, because statistically that would make it more likely that he would procreate, he would have an offspring, even if he doesn't actually want to, but that's the biological programming. That's the male agenda, right? That's the male status quo. Why would that guy who has these multiple options want to put himself into the bondage of being in a constricted sort of long-term relationship that's enforced by law, where actually, if it messes up, which it's probably going to, because about 50% of marriages do end in divorce, 70% of course initiated by women, why would he want to put himself in that situation when actually what he could do instead is just have a great time, party, meet all these different women, maybe have some kind of, some regulars and then some other women that he just meets as he goes along, and he works on his business and his other interests instead. Why would he want to put himself into that situation? Marriage is a beta strategy. By and large, okay, the beta male who feels that he doesn't have options is the person who is more likely to get married, all right? Women don't necessarily want those guys up front when they're in their party years, when they're having a great time in the Vegas pool party and so on. But, time marches on. They realize, well, I'm going to have to go with somebody because otherwise, my dream of a family and of making this happen is not going to be achievable. And so they're willing to downgrade their standards a little bit. And this is what we saw in some of those videos yesterday, if you remember. Women talking about how they might, end up actually reassessing their standards, their desire for that perfect elite level dude. They might start to reassess things if they got to about the age of 30, they were unmarried, and, they had to look at other options. Anyway, with all of that being said, I tend to get quite a lot of hate online about my status and I suppose some of the videos I put out. So let's have a look at this, because somebody actually, interestingly enough, some people reacted badly. We used to say for better or worse. Some people reacted negatively to a little clip that I put out from a stream that I did on here the other day. So let's just have a look at this. This will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we go. This is on Twitter. So this is the video I put out. This is clipped from a show we did here the other day. We used to say for better or worse, right? For richer, for poorer, sickness and in health, etc., etc. That's what it's meant to be. But we all know now it isn't. So it's obviously I'm talking about marriage here. We used to say it was forever in sickness and in health, richer and poorer, all the rest of it. That really is no longer the case, okay? And that, unfortunately, appears to be driven mainly by women, because women statistically are the ones who are ending marriages. Women are the ones who are initiating divorce, okay? So I'm just talking about that. We all know now that's a load of... Everyone just ignores that, or certainly women ignore that. let's face it, because 80% of women are the ones who are breaking up the marriages. They just kind of put that to one side. Okay, yeah, fine, whatever. And then 5 years later, when they're not happy anymore, all right, when the guy is, this guy's just not as sexy. He's not like the Chad when I first met him. When I met you, you were this dude. You looked like the guys in the Diet Coke ads. You were kind of ripped. You were out there living this devil-may-care bachelor life. And now it's all got a bit boring. Now you're this house husband. What? So this is just the way these things go, isn't it, right? I mean, we talked about this already. I'll do another show about what they call the betarization process. But women will initially seek to domesticate the dude because they want security. They think, well, I just want him around all the time. I want him to be a house husband. He falls into that frame, and then she starts to find him less attractive. Okay, so it's kind of self-defeating from the female point of view, but this is kind of what happens. Why, she doesn't find that sexy, and then she dumps his ass. Okay, and all he's done is he's gone along with what society told him he should do, with what the Tradcons told him he should do. Get married, settle down, do the right thing, blah blah blah, and then he gets his life wrecked a few years later. Okay, so, yeah, pretty straightforward stuff, and I don't think I've said anything massively controversial there. I think that's kind of, borne out by the statistics. It's borne out from just being alive and knowing other human beings. Like I said before, I mean, a lot of my friends who are my age have now been divorced and are either on to second marriages or they're like, they're single or whatever, right? So this stuff doesn't... what I'm saying here is not anything that I think is outside the bounds of reality. But what are people saying? Well, Samson says, this is one of the weakest, most beta takes I've ever seen. Alphas are leaders. If you can't lead your wife, you ain't it. So what about Tom Brady then? What about Tom Brady? Are we saying Tom Brady is weak and beta and can't lead his wife? Are we saying that, Will Smith? I mean, when we look at... even Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump had a wife that cheated on him. I mean, if we're talking about... look at the dudes who are in the most preeminent alpha positions on the planet, and even they are having this stuff happening to them. So this guy's kind of deluded. I don't think Samson with his fake profile picture on Twitter is any kind of alpha or any kind of authority on this. But he says relinquishing your authority and doing away with an institution because you're having a social tantrum is pathetic, rage quitting. Well, I mean, yeah, that's just bollocks, because I didn't say cancel marriage. I was just making some observations. And then people are saying, okay, right, so Tradwife today says, spoken like a man who doesn't think he can do well as a husband. Well, I mean, again, if Tom Brady can't do well as a husband, then what chance have I got? What chance has anybody got, really? This isn't about whether I am beta or not beta or a leader or not a leader or any of these kind of things. It's like what's statistically what's happening out there? What do we observe happening out there in real life? Both in terms of celebrities and famous people, but just as well with our friends and relatives and people we know in society around us. All right, let's have a look. Blah, 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 blah. More people slagging me off. And then Tradwife today says, yes, it's amazing how many of the, in quotes, relationship experts and coaches are just some serial fornicators who have completely failed at the gold standard of finding and marrying a wonderful partner in their 20s and have apparently learned nothing from their failure, but feel totally qualified to lecture on the topic. I mean, where do you even start with a comment like that? It's so dumb. For a start, I've never claimed to be personally a relationship expert. I am a dating coach. My role really is to teach men and also women how to create attraction at the beginning, how to meet people at the start, okay? Because for guys in particular, that is a massive problem. I mean, forget about relationships, forget about the long-term stuff. That's a separate thing. I mean, for that's a distant dream for many, many guys now. I think we quoted 63% yesterday of guys who've just dropped out of the dating market. So, forget about relationship advice. These dudes aren't getting anything. They're not getting a foot in the door, let alone a fucking relationship. So forget about that. And that's not my role. I've never claimed to be that. That's one thing. Are serial fornicators? Well, guilty, Your Honor. I mean, yeah, she's obviously coming from I guess a Christian sort of, take on this. I mean, yeah, serial fornication. It's kind of fun, really. I don't really see a massive problem with that. Have completely failed at the gold standard of finding and marrying a wonderful... Why is that the gold standard? I mean, why the hell is that the gold standard? For who? Decided by who? Why is it the gold standard that in your 20s, as a guy, you lock up your nutsack and you commit to, the chains of matrimony forever? Why is that the gold standard? And if it is the gold standard, why does it go wrong so often? Why do 50% of these bloody things break up? Why is there evidence to suggest that beyond that, a majority of marriages actually aren't happy, even those that stay together? If this is the gold standard, why isn't it great? Why isn't it? Why doesn't it work brilliantly? Why is it so problematic? It's just absolute nonsense. And they've apparently learned nothing from their failure. Well, I've learned nothing from my failure because I wasn't stupid enough to do it in the first place. But feel totally qualified to lecture on the topic. Well, I can lecture on the topic because I've seen the dangers, because I have friends and I have people that I know in the community and I have people that I've worked with. I've had many, many, many guys I've worked with as a coach who've come to me, having come out of horrendous marriages, having been screwed over royally by their ex-wives, not allowed to see their children, no custody, their ex-wives going off with somebody else, the children taking on the name of that new partner. Okay, I've seen the carnage that this has created, that this trad wife today is presumably just saying, yeah, bro, just do it anyway. And if you don't do it, you're not a real man. You're not a real alpha. Absolute nonsense, absolute garbage, obviously. So we can only really laugh at people like this, but it's kind of an example of how the traditionalists will view anybody who goes against their narrative, because obviously they have chosen to live a certain lifestyle, they've chosen a certain thing. Now, look, I'm not saying don't get married. I'm not saying never get married. I'm not saying it can never work. Of course it can. But what I am saying is that you have to be very careful and you have to be very, very, very aware of what you are getting into. Okay, you've got to be very aware of what you're getting into, and you've got to be with that person, I would say, for a decent period of time. I think people talk a lot about vetting. Okay, the idea of vetting is, right, I'm with this girlfriend. She's great. I think she's hot. We get on very well. We've got similar interests. I can see this like building into something. I can see this becoming something. Okay, fine. That's very nice. Congratulations. But you don't really know someone until you've been with them for a significant period of time, I would argue. And so, at the very least, the concept of vetting is, okay, I'm going to be with this person for a period of time. I would say minimum of a year, probably longer, ideally. And I'm going to figure it out. We're going to figure out, okay, is she the right person? And you're only going to know that by observing her over time, okay? Now, that I would say is a bare minimum. However, really, even then, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Even if you were with her for 5 years, for example, before you got married, you still don't really know how she's going to react in another 10 years' time, in another 15 years' time, if the shit hits the fan, if things get difficult, if you lose your job, if one of you gets ill, if there's some sort of massive problem that happens, because life is a problematic beast, right? We can't assume it's just going to be this linear thing that's just going to trail, you're just going to trail off into the sunset and it's going to be great. Problems come up. How are people going to act under stress? Everybody puts their best foot forward at the beginning of a new relationship. Everybody acts as their best self in the courtship phase, in the honeymoon period. Why? Because we want the other person to like us, okay? We will do our best to hide the red flags, to conceal the red flags from our new partner, because it's in our interests to do so, okay? And everybody being caught up in the first flush of lust and erotic desire and love is going to naturally be full of endorphins and less prone to being unpleasant or being resentful against the other person or doing this and that. Down the line, when the first flush of that honeymoon period has worn off, not so much. Who knows? Okay. So, with that in mind, let's have a look at some Tradcon advice. But before we do, the Raging Tomato says, did you get a new channel? Yeah, so this is a second channel. We're going to be doing more live streaming on here. There's some other content that we've got coming up as well, which is going to be very exciting. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. My existing channel is also still there, still very much operational, but this is more for live streaming and doing some of these more deeper dives into some of this dating marketplace stuff. But we will be offering dating advice here. And by the way, guys, if you've got questions about dating, about I'm talking like now specific questions about relationships or dating, or how to get girls, or if you're a girl, how do I meet the right kind of guy? If you've got those questions, give me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or leave a comment below. Get in touch with me. You can DM me on social as well. As I said, @realtroyfrancis on Twitter and Instagram. and we can figure something out. We can get you on the show, on a Zoom call, and we can have a conversation live about it, because that's what we want to do. We're here to help, guys. We're here to try to solve this dating quagmire we all find ourselves in. Mackie Roll says, listen to who you want, but try their advice and see if it works. Yeah, okay. I mean, you've got to be careful, I think. You've really got to be careful with some of the advice out there. So, okay, let's have a look now and see some world-class Tradcon advice. So, traditional conservatives, kind of names, does what it says on the tin. You know, the name is what you would expect. These are people of a traditional mindset who are also conservative, and obviously they're going to have a very specific worldview in terms of this stuff. Now, at the vanguard of this is the Daily Wire, and the Daily Wire commentators in particular, Matt Walsh, Candace Owens, and Ben Shapiro. Jordan Peterson gets in there as well. We've got Michael Knowles, I think. So, and they're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet with this stuff. But let's have a look at this video, which is this is actually about 12 months old now, but they did a Daily Wire backstage where they all sat down and talked about why you should get married when you're young, which is not something I agree with. So let's have a look at this and see what they have to say. And let's have some volume on this as well. That would be nice, wouldn't it, chat? It's nice to have some volume.
Civilization. It really is. I mean, people aren't having babies. He's exactly right. People aren't getting married at an age where they actually are able to grow up with one another, because your wife shapes you and you shape her, and that makes you both better people. You know, when I married my wife, I just turned 24 and she was 20, and we've spent our lives growing.
Right. So, you know, that's the first problem, and this applies also with Matt Walsh. Shapiro was 24 when he got married, and his wife was 20. Okay, I think he says here he's 38. He's about 39 now. So it's quite a long time ago, for a start. That's one thing. And things have changed exponentially over the last decade or so because of social media, the dating apps, smartphones, and all of that stuff. But also, he was incredibly young when he met this woman. I would say too young for a guy. And his wife at 20... There are problems with marrying a woman that young, which I'll explain in a bit, but let's hear further what he has to say.
Growing up together, right? I mean, now I'm 38, and she's 35, and that's a long time to spend. I mean, half her life, basically we've spent together, and that means that you grow and you change and you have experiences, and then you bring kids into the world, and that radically changes you even more than just the marriage did. And when Jordan says that if you're 40 and single, you're blowing it, he is cutting directly against the grain of all current conventional wisdom, which is.
Well, is he, though? So I think what he's saying here, Jordan Peterson said, if you are 40 and single, then you've blown it. And Ben is saying, well, that's going against all conventional wisdom. I'm not sure about that. I think it depends where you are looking to obtain that wisdom. I think, for me, it seems like a lot of the mainstream culture still pushes marriage. I mean, certainly, I was working in corporate work in London some years ago, and I wouldn't say not the corporations themselves, but I would say the people there, the culture was absolutely, I've got a job, got a good job, I'm working hard. It was all about getting married. The women were all super excited, somebody got engaged, it was like, woo, there was this kind of competition to who's going to be the next person to get married. And amongst the men as well, it was just the thing to do. It was like, right, okay, when are you going to meet someone? Oh, right, when are you going to do the right thing, And that was amongst the dudes who were meant to be the more carefree, devil may care, I don't want to get tied down one. So it seems to me that in the mainstream, actually, the culture still very much is pro-marriage. Certainly in the UK anyway. I don't see it being massively different in the US. There are people on the fringes who are a bit more either degenerate or they believe in things like polyamory or whatever, but it seems to me in the main, if you look at, and a great thing to do is to look at TV advertising. So if you look at TV advertising in the UK, so much of it is aimed at families, and it's aimed at women because women are the main people who spend money, and it's aimed at women who are mothers and who are the head of families. So it seems a bit unrealistic to claim that there's this massive push against being married, because I think it's kind of still the opposite, to be honest. I think it's only a few random degenerates like me who are sort of saying, no, hang on a minute, let's think about this.
The best thing that you can do is delay marriage until you make associate at the law firm working 2,200 hours.
Well, now they say.
Oh, okay, right, all right, fine. So I see what he's saying. So he's saying that women are being told that you can push back. I think he's talking about women predominantly who are being told that you can push back marriage until you've made it in your career. I see what he's saying there. Okay, there is something of that going on.
Grow up and then get married, and in the past they said get married and grow up
so that you can.
Why is he wearing a key? Do you reckon that's his? Is that actually his door key? It's interesting.
So my dad used to make a point about this. He used to say, people would ask him about when to get married. And he said, well, or how to find the right person. And what he always said is you have to make the decision to get married before you find the right person. Because if you didn't make the decision that you wanted to get married, then the right person could come along and you could just pull them out of the water. You actually have to make we live in a society where we sort of decide the opposite. It's like, oh, I'll fall in love with the person, and then we'll have sex, and then maybe
I don't entirely agree with that, because I think that people will have an idea in their head of whether they want to get married or not. And then when they're dating, they will think, well, they'll kind of, women do this in particular, but I think men do this as well. They'll be thinking in the back of their head, could this be the right one? So I don't think it's like you would accidentally lose the love of your life because you're like, oh shit, I hadn't made that decision to get married. I think for many people, I think probably for most people, that is it's so embedded in the culture. I don't think anyone's forgetting about marriage and then, oh shit, I let that girl go and now I could have married her. Oh no, I don't think that's realistic.
4 years down the road we'll get married. We completely reversed the polarity and the order of events. Look at the sitcoms from the 90s versus the sitcoms from the 60s, right? In the 60s it was, you fall in love, you get married, you have sex. Now it's, you have sex, and then it's really hard for you to say if you fell in love with the person, right? That's like the big move in a sitcom now is, did you fall in love? And then you never get married. I mean, marriage is so passe.
Well, marriage is the series finale. There's another aspect of this, which is that as we delay the onset of adulthood, the left also wants to reduce the age of things like voting. I don't think 18-year-olds today should be able to vote, is the honest truth. And you could say, well, you're saying that people should be able to serve in the military and they shouldn't be able to vote. Well, I'll let those ones vote, because they're doing something that grows you up called joining the military.
Right.
But no, the whole point of having a voting age is that we don't want children voting. Children aren't mature. They don't have stakes. They don't understand the stakes that they do have. So we don't want it. Matt got in a little bit of trouble for some comments that he made back when he was a shock jock about.
What does it take to be a
oh no
dancer?
Commercial break, guys. Hang on a second.
It takes a mind of steel and limbs of rubber.
At what age people should have sex, and I don't want to rehash all the terrain, except to say that it is
what age they should get married.
At what age they should get married. It is. Thank you. It is absolutely the case that for the vast majority of human history, people who were of the age of sexual maturity were considered candidates.
They're so alpha, aren't they? Sitting around with their cigars
for marriage. We all agree now that cannot possibly be the standard, because you're still a kid for so long. The reason it's creepy for people to get married super young now, because it cuts against everything that we think about the maturing process and the age at which people.
So what's he saying? Should they get married young or not?
People should be mature, and in some ways that's a byproduct of our success, right? We've been very successful as a species. We can protect people younger. We don't have to shove you out in the field to work in the sun when you're 9 years old. We don't have to put those responsibilities.
Your life expectancy isn't 35.
Life expectancy isn't 35. And so I don't want to make it sound as though every aspect of that progress that we've had is bad. But the fact that we say that one should not grow up, or that marriage isn't an instrumental part of the process of growing up, I do think is really
It used to be that we said, okay, we'll delay adulthood, right? So adulthood isn't when you're 14. My wife's grandmother got married at 14 in Morocco, right?
Almost all of our great-grandparents probably.
Right,
The Virgin Mary was probably 15 when she got married.
I mean, but we don't do that anymore. But real adulthood sets in when you're 18, right? And now real adulthood sets in after.
So should they get married when they're 18 or not? Like, I don't understand. Maybe I'm just losing the argument here, threading the argument. But it seems like, are they saying they should marry when they're young, or they're not saying they should marry when they're young? Because presumably, if you can,
Or death.
Presumably from their point of view, shouldn't it be better to get married at young? That young?
That's the idea in our society is not to push back the line a little bit so that you actually have a little bit more brain development and can make better decisions about your values. The idea is obliterate the line so it doesn't exist. Well, the problem with that goes both ways. One is that you are obliterating adulthood so that you have fully grown adults who are acting like children. The other is if there's no distinction between adults and children, then you can start treating children like adults, right? And this is what you're currently seeing with the trans movement. The next thing that's going to happen, again, I think we are living in that meme, you know, that the slippery slope meme. I did a whole podcast on this last week. The slippery slope meme that shows the slippery slope and it shows no, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And then at the bottom, there's an arrow that says, you are here. Yeah. Right? And that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, they keep saying it's not going to happen. It's just it's never going to happen. We're never going to do that. Well, you guys are currently making the argument that a 5-year-old is capable of choosing his gender. So I'm going to need you to explain.
Yeah, okay, right. This seems to be going off topic a little bit. Let's speed it on a bit. See what
But it'll start with what they've already started.
The enactment of it, and you were describing the metaphysical version of it. But the whole point is, they're kind of the same, you know? They're kind of intertwined.
By the way, what you talked about growing up in a marriage is doubly important because you're growing up with a woman.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I married.
So, okay, right. So here's something on that, right? I get what they're saying, right? So Ben Shapiro was 24 and she was 20, and now they're in their late 30s, going into their 40s, and he's saying they've grown up together. That's very nice. That's very sweet. If it works for them, that's wonderful. But there are several problems with this. One of the problems with this is that you also get stories of women who marry when they're very young, and then a few years go by, and maybe they have a kid, they have a couple of kids or whatever. And then suddenly the woman starts to think, well, hang on a minute. I actually missed out on my early 20s. I actually missed out on all those party years, that fun that my friends and the people around me were having, the people on Instagram that I could see were having. And so this idea, and I think this often comes from conservative think tank, or sort of not think tanks, conservative sort of shows like this, that okay, just marry somebody when they're young because they're going to pair bond to you more, and it's going to all go better because they're not going to stray, and blah blah blah, because you've been their one and only. Not necessarily true in today's culture, because it, you know, there's so much temptation around, and that FOMO, you know, fear of missing out, can really kick in when she gets a little bit older. Right. Couple more comments here. It's a two-way street of commitment. I mean, he's got to be doing something, right, since they're still married. Okay, so Ben Shapiro, yep, still married. Matt Walsh, still married. Okay, fine. You know, and good luck to them. I mean, listen, who am I to say it's not going to work out? Obviously, sometimes these things work out. Is that the majority of times? Well, looking at the data, no. Because we know that around 50% of marriages will end in divorce. And in some geographical territories, it's even higher than that. Okay? So this is by no means this perfect thing that you can just magically get right. Maybe there is something in the idea that, well, if you marry within the same religion, if you marry people with, you know, somebody from your church, it's going to work out better. Although then when you look at the stats, even then, I think it's a quarter of marriages from within the same church community or from within the same religion also end in divorce. So that's not a fail-safe either, but maybe it's better. I don't know. I mean, we had the story about Stephen Crowder, who was coming from a similar perspective as these people, and his marriage ended very famously recently. So it's all great until it isn't, if that makes sense. I mean, marriage, it looks great from the outside until suddenly it isn't. And only time will tell. Okay, so we don't know. And look, I wish these people luck. I hope it's great for them. I'm just saying that as a prescription for young men, generally, is it a good idea? Probably not. Or at least I think you need to proceed with caution, rather. Right, YouTube Premium buying time. Right. Mackie Roll says, hello, Mackie Roll. Good to see you, man. Thank you for joining, and I hope you've signed up for the channel. Raging Tomato, also, good to see you guys in here. We're getting some more people coming over now, which is great. We have a great example of PewDiePie, for example, who dated his girlfriend for around 10 years, I think, before getting married. Why rush marriage when you don't know how to keep a long-term relationship? I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that signing a legal contract and doing all that, if that's actually what you want to do, and that's a slightly separate issue, we can discuss the legal aspects and ramifications of marriage separately another time, maybe. I mean, it's kind of been done to death, really, hasn't it? We all know it's a dangerous thing for a lot of guys. But if you do want to do that, I think you've got to be very, very, very certain of the person that you're doing it with. And I think jumping into it after a couple of months is an extremely bad idea. Okay, I want to do a video. Let's have a look at this. Right, let's have a look at this. So Matt Walsh is giving some wonderful dating advice now. This is from 5 months ago. So let's have a look at this and see what we think of his lovely advice.
You got a kind face. You got a good head of hair. You seem like a nice guy. I want to help you. I'm going to help you rediscover your manhood. You in or you out? I'm in.
From David, dear sweet daddy, you frequently mention the importance of marriage and the calling of most people to marriage.
Right, I'm not a frequent enough viewer of Matt Walsh to understand that, but why is he calling him sweet daddy? I mean, it seems a bit fucking weird. I mean, is it just me? I don't know. Maybe that's an in-joke or something. I'm not sure, but that seems slightly odd. Maybe it's just one of those things. I need to watch his content more. Anyway.
You're right, and I should get married, but a woman who I could...
I think you're right, and I should get married. I mean, so this dude, who's presumably a fan of Matt Walsh, who, to the extent that he calls him his sweet daddy, is like, yes, Matt Walsh, who I've never met, who's a multimillionaire, who wouldn't know me if we passed in the street and has got nothing to do with me and won't be there to pick up the pieces if it goes wrong. Yes, Matt Walsh, I think I should get married. I mean, come on. I mean, you shouldn't really be basing these big life decisions on online social media pundits, myself included.
Reasonably meet geographically, is not spoken for, shares similar values, and is herself interested in me seems so astronomically unlikely as to be impossible. I'm not sure I know anyone who meets 2 or 3 of these criteria, so expecting to find someone who meets all 4 just seems unreasonable. For example, I'm not sure I know any women at my church who are single, and they seem to find me repulsive anyway.
Poor guy.
Ladies at my work will put up with me, but they're all taken and or godless communists.
Godless communists, drive them out.
Anywhere else, I'm not given a second thought and I feel invisible. The idea of looking for a potential wife seems like shopping for a multi-million-dollar mansion for when I win the lottery. I don't want to give up. I think I owe it to my parents to give them a daughter-in-law and grandchildren.
I completely disagree. I don't think you owe anybody anything, all right? You didn't ask to be born. You were born. While you're here, have the best time that you possibly can. Work on your goals. Work on your ambitions. But don't, for God's sake, think that you owe anybody anything, particularly not your parents, okay? I'm not saying don't have children. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But look, you don't owe it to your parents to do this, okay? You don't owe your parents anything. I mean, yes, be there for your parents. Look after your parents. Support them. Be there in their old age. All of that good stuff. But you don't have to make this huge life decision because of some feeling that you owe it. That's just ridiculous.
And I don't think I'm the only man who finds himself in this predicament. What do you think? Well, you're not the only man in this predicament, certainly. And I think that every man, I can't say every, but a great number of men feel this way at a certain point in their lives, even the ones who end up married. I can remember myself at a time thinking like you did. Like the idea, because it's not real right now, and it's all kind of in theory. And so the idea of finding a woman who I'm attracted to and shares my values and is attracted to me for some reason, and all those things, and lives somewhere within a vicinity where I can see this person, like the idea of all that lining up and actually getting married and starting a family and all.
Matt Walsh has got such a comforting voice, hasn't he? Sort of gravelly baritone, this kind of avuncular kind of, hey, listen, I was there too, I know. He's got a very, very good voice for this kind of thing, which is really just fluffing up the guy at the moment. He's really just fluffing up the dude who's written in. He's not really yet offered anything particularly tangible, has he? Except to say, listen, it will be okay.
All these things, there was a time in my own life where it did feel a bit like window shopping for mansions on the hope that you'll hit a Powerball or something like that. But the good news is that
the good news is it worked out for me, and I'm a multi-millionaire with a massive YouTube channel and a Daily Wire contract, so screw you.
For, I would say probably the majority of men who feel that way, it does end up happening.
Well, does it though? I mean, increasingly, it seems to be pretty tough out there. We were looking at statistics the other day, talking about how the number of men who remain virgins now in Gen Z has tripled in the last couple of decades. Okay, marriage rates are going down, and men seem to be being adversely affected by this. So I'm not sure that it's as easy as he seems to be suggesting.
Because as it turns out, winning a lottery there's very few people that ever do that, but a great many adults end up getting married. So it's a.
I mean, look, he is right about that, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Actually, the reality is that the bar for getting married is pretty low. So as much as there's a lot of doom and gloom out there about the difficulties of the dating marketplace, I think in the end, Matt Walsh is probably correct. Yeah, if you hold out long enough, you'll probably find somebody who, out of desperation or pity, will allow you to put a ring on it, and then you'll spend some miserable decades with them before they finally divorce you. I'm sorry, I'm being overly nihilistic now, but you know what I'm saying. Like, yes, you probably will luck out and you'll meet somebody, but who's that person going to be? What's the quality of that woman going to be like? Is she going to be stunningly beautiful? Is she going to be amazingly sweet and feminine and have a great temper and look after you and cosset you and all this kind of stuff? Or is it just going to be you're going to take who you can get because you're at a place in the dating marketplace where you don't have much bargaining power? It sounds like he lives in a crap area as well, geographically, because he's talking about this issue of she lives near to me. So, yeah, I mean, you can probably find something. It's a bit like, well, I don't have much money. Can I get a car? You can probably get some secondhand motor somewhere for, not very much money. But is it going to be the car of your dreams? Maybe not. And you've got to bear in mind, this is going to be the car that you will have for the rest of your life, to extend that metaphor. So, yes, on the one hand, of course, there's a lot of people out there in the world. And if you hold out long enough, you'll probably find somebody who will touch your pee-pee or who will, who will be prepared to shack up with you for a bit. But is that really going to be the person you want? And I think when we talk about this, the top 20% of men are the ones who are getting all the action. I think what we probably really mean is that the top 20% of men are getting all of the action with the most desirable women, okay? There's a substrata of society under that where, yeah, things are happening, but, I mean, if you look around you, are all of those people happy? Are they really with the person they wanted to be with? Probably not, to be honest.
A normal thing. The way you're feeling right now is normal, but what you're talking about and what you desire is also normal, which means that just like statistically, the odds that it will happen are great. Now, there are also, I get these kinds of questions, and it also puts me in a tough spot because I'm not given important details that I would need. Like, I have no idea how old you are. I don't really know anything about you other than what you've said here. And some of that, it can change the calculus somewhat. So if you were to tell me that you're a single guy, never married, feeling this way, and you're 55, well, I would tell you that it's not hopeless. I mean, people marry later in life. So,
thank God.
So you shouldn't give up on that by any means. It does make it more difficult after.
I might throw in the towel at 55, to be honest. I think maybe that's enough. I don't know. We'll see.
Now, if you're a guy in your early 20s and you're feeling this way, then it's like, trust me. Then I can.
I mean, the way I think he gives some more tangible advice as we go through, but the way he's talking about it now is almost a bit it's almost like the way women talk about this. It's almost like, hey, just hang on, just keep hope alive and it'll all work out. What he's not really addressing yet are the very real problems that a lot of men out there are finding in terms of actually getting a woman to even give them the time of day, let alone to get married. So it's kind of, yeah, he's not really addressing, he doesn't seem to be aware of the problem that a lot of guys are having, even to find sexual partners, okay? And have those guys got too high standards? Maybe. I mean, that's another conversation. But, you know, there's plenty of dudes out there who are just not getting anything, okay? And Matt Walsh just isn't really addressing that. He's just saying, hey, statistically, it'll probably be okay. Just keep hoping and fingers crossed and you'll be good, bro.
Say with much more confidence that that if you're in that category, that it will work out and it will be fine. And you will, because almost any guy in their early 20s is going to feel this way. And if you listen to a lot of women in their early 20s, they feel this way too. I'm never going to find the right guy, all the same. What you're talking about in the reverse for women, great many women feeling that way. The other part of the good news is that it is true that a lot of this is under your control. I think you have more control than you realize.
But, well, a lot of it is out of your control, and arguably the most important part is out of your control, which is to find a willing participant in this quest for marriage, because if you can't find a woman who's willing to go along with that with you, then you are fucked.
That you do. Or at the very least, you have a control over a certain part of it, and so you should focus on controlling those parts. Focus on the parts that you can control. The parts that you can't, you can't make the perfect woman materialize out of thin air. You can't do that.
Indeed, you can't.
Can't control other people. If you meet a woman and she's not the right kind of woman, you can't make her into that, and you shouldn't try. You can't make a woman into the kind of woman who you want to marry, but you can make yourself into the kind of man that women want to marry. Buying a new car can be a stressful experience for anyone, especially if you're at a dealership and spend the entire day with the crowds, the stress. Car Zing with credit agencies lead foot into the dealership. Even if you're not in the market for a new car, you just check out images. You can dive deep into each of your performance capabilities. Zoom in on craftsmanship detail that sets these automobiles apart from the rest. That's carzing.com. Again, don't know anything about you. I've never seen you. I think it's very likely that you are being much harder on yourself than you ought to be. There are repulsive people out there, but it's uncommon. Then there are other people that intentionally try to make themselves repulsive, like the green-haired people on TikTok with facial piercings and all the rest of it. I assume that's not you. So you're probably being too hard on yourself, but we can all improve. And if you're still single and you haven't been able to find a woman, and you've made attempts, and there are women that you're interested in, they're not interested in you, then you can control some aspects of that. You can do things like you can go to the gym, you can get in really good shape. That's going to...
So, the first piece, so we're 6 minutes, 11 seconds into the video, and the first piece of tangible advice is go to the gym.
Improve your chances significantly. And it's not even because women are shallow. I mean, some women are shallow, just like some men are shallow. But the physical aspect does matter. That's the first thing someone's going to notice about you. And they do have to be physically attracted to you. Women aren't as visual as men are, but it still is an important aspect. So you can get to the gym. You can get yourself in good shape. You start thinking about, what you wear, how you present yourself. If you think that your personality...
Yeah, okay, well, these are valid points. I mean, look, you should go to the gym. You should think about what you wear. I wouldn't necessarily... is that cool? I wouldn't necessarily wear that. But, yes, you should think about fashion. We talk about this stuff all the time. Fashion, fitness, game, frame, all of these good things. So yeah, these are valid points, but are they going to really solve the problem?
Personality is not
in themselves
attracting the kind of attention that you want. Or if you walk into a room and you feel invisible and you're not able to command attention in the room the way that maybe you see other people are able to do. Well, that again, good news. That's something that you can control. Even your personality, you can change your personality.
Okay, he's right about this. I agree with this. If you walk into the room and you're not commanding attention, that's down to the energy that you're emitting. That's kind of part of your riz. I mean, really what he's talking about now, he wouldn't say it, but what he's actually talking about now is game, okay? And yes, that is within your control. That is something that you can do something about. You can certainly get better in that aspect of your life. You can certainly upskill yourself in that area. So this I would agree with, but I think that he needed to make much more of this, okay? Because this really is the key thing, How are you actually coming across? I mean, we've had this guy who's written this letter in, calling Matt Walsh his dear sweet daddy. We don't know a lot about this dude, but he's saying that the women in his church find him repulsive, which is pretty strong, to say the least. we would need to do a consultation with this guy. We would need to sit down with this guy and be like, okay, so what does he look like? What's he wearing? Is it his physique? You know, and what's his personality like? And what's he actually doing when he's going to interact with women? You know, probably, going out on a limb here, he's probably doing a lot of things wrong, or at least very suboptimally, okay? And that is just completely screwing his chances, all right? But we need to make more of that in a video like this. We don't just start off with 15 minutes of saying, yeah, bro, it'll probably be okay because I got married and it was fine.
I'm a big believer in that. It's one of the reasons why I've never been a huge fan of all these personality tests out there. I know there are some that are supposed to be really scientific and people really believe in them. And there's some validity to it. You know, there's kind of a natural sort of baseline personality that we have, that we all have. But I think that it gives people this idea that, well, you're a certain personality type and that's what you are. And so you act a certain way and that's what it is and you can't change it. And I don't think that's true. You know, your personality there's a lot that goes into it, but a lot of it has to do with your own behavior. Like when people describe your personality, they're talking about how you act and what you say and how you present yourself.
Yes, okay, so more agreement here with Matt Walsh. I think what he's saying here is also correct. I do think that personality is malleable. I do think that you can change the way that you put yourself across and the way that other people perceive you. I think he is right here. But, again, he should have put this stuff at the beginning of the video because this is the most important stuff. It's not about sitting there and thinking, well, it'll probably be okay. It's about this stuff. This is the stuff that's really going to help the letter writer.
And the kind of moods that you're in, or at least the kind of moods that you present to the public. That's what other people are talking about when they describe your personality. And all of that is controllable. You can control all of that. So that's what I would do.
That music in the background, ding, 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 that little country-tinged guitar in the background.
Just start thinking about making yourself, if you feel like you're not desirable to women, you can change that. So think about all the things, make a mental checklist. What are all the things that you think a good woman would find desirable?
Right, okay, so this is tricky because now the guy's going to write down, I'm guessing, but the guy's probably going to write down a load of nonsense like, well, she wants a noble, solid man who's a pillar of the local community and of his church and all that kind of stuff. And all of that stuff might be very nice and very laudable, but is it sexy? No, it isn't sexy, okay? So women aren't aroused by that. So, yes, all of those things might be nice on a, ticking it off list, but is she going to get turned on by that? And attraction, and Matt, to be fair, did acknowledge this earlier on, attraction needs to be at the base of any relationship, whether it's going to be a marriage or it's going to be a short-term fling. So probably the list this dude is going to come up with, if he sits down and writes it, is going to be short of the mark.
And, if that's a checklist with 5 major items, let's say, the great news is that about probably 4 of those items you can change immediately. There are other things that might take more time. I mean, obviously, being financially successful, that also helps because even women who fashion themselves as independent and progressive and enlightened are actually looking for men who can provide for them. That's like biologically hardwired. And that's not something that you can immediately change overnight. But it's also not a necessity either. I was not anywhere close to financially successful when I got married. So those are things that you could change. And on the financial success part of it too, I would also say that if you're not rich right now, like that's okay. Most people aren't, and you can't.
Most people aren't. I am, but whatever.
I'm not going to give you some get rich quick scheme where you can go out and be rich in 100 days. What you can do though is present the qualities of someone who a woman might think, well, that person, yeah, they might not be super financially successful now, but I could see that they would be in the future.
That is also true. Women are far more alert to potential and to ambition than we might think, particularly younger women. I think when you get to 30, 40 plus, whatever, then it becomes the potential needs to have realized itself at least somewhat. But certainly when you are younger, yes, if you can show that potential, if you can showcase, yes, I'm a go-getter, yes, I'm somebody who makes moves in the world, and it seems likely to her, that you're going to be the kind of guy who's going to make stuff happen, then yes, she can absolutely be attracted to that. And he's right, you don't need to be a multimillionaire, to get a girlfriend in your 20s or early 30s or whatever.
I could see the potential for that. So you can present the qualities of a hardworking, ambitious person with lots
Yes, you can be Elon Musk.
of big ideas and big dreams. Women find that appealing. So that's what I would do. Work on all of that. Implement it for, a while. It's not going to be an overnight fix. And then come back and we'll see how you're doing. And I think that's it. That's only one, but we'll leave it there.
Very good, very good. Okay, so Matt Walsh, dating advice. Some of it, actually, I agree with. A lot of it, I don't. Or at least the angle that he's coming at from, I don't agree with. Or at least it's not the way that I would present it. Because, as I said, I think there's a Pollyanna-ish aspect to this where he's sort of saying, oh, listen, bro, it'll all be fine. It'll all work out in time. And, just wait, and it's all in God's plan and that kind of thing, which I don't think is a great strategy. But some of the stuff he's saying about, yes, work out, yes, dress well, yes, your personality is within your control, and I do think that's true. I do think that you can mold your personality. It might take you time. It certainly took me a very long time to change from how I was to how I became and how I am now, but it is definitely doable, okay, because people do judge you on your actions, on the way you actually move in the world. It's not like they can't see what's happening in your head, okay? So if you change the behaviors and do the right behaviors, that's going to put you in a better stead. And yeah, financial success. I also agree that ambition counts for a lot. Drive, determination. She can see that you're the kind of dude who's probably going to get there at some point. That's very important. That can be very attractive too. So all of these things are correct, but there are other things that come into it as well. As I said, it sounds like this dude who's written to Matt Walsh is living in a bit of a crap place. We don't know where he is. I'm guessing it's somewhere in a flyover state, somewhere in the US, okay? I'm guessing it's not in a big metropolitan city like New York or even somewhere like Miami or whatever. So his dating options might be limited anyway. It doesn't say anything about how he's actually meeting these women. There's this vague reference about going to church. Okay, fine, but there's probably not that many women in his church. They find him repulsive anyway. He's going to have to spread the net, okay? What he should probably be doing is exploring the dating apps, but even more than that, he should be getting out there and doing some cold approach and meeting new women in real life. Matt Walsh doesn't say anything about that, so the guy's not going to do it. He might work on himself, he might work on his characteristics, but that woman's just not going to fall into his lap anyway. Even if the guy gets ripped, the guy gets ripped and he makes up a business plan and he starts making a ton of money and all that kind of stuff, it's not like the woman's going to just magically appear, okay? You have to be proactive. As a guy, you have to be proactive in the dating marketplace. You have to go out there and make it happen, all right? Comments. Have we got any comments in the chat? I think we have. Mackie Roll says, maybe they call him Daddy because of the voice. I wish I had a voice like that. Matt Walsh does have a very good voice. It's a sort of very calming, very soothing, isn't it? You could fall asleep listening to that. And I frequently do. If you made it to JBB, all right, bro. He says, if you made it to 55 and managed not to ruin your life with marriage, he says it's not too late to ruin it now. Yeah, man. I mean, listen. If you've made it to 55 and you've not ruined your life with marriage, you are one of the winners, bro. You are one of the winners. Don't Matt Walsh it. Don't go ruin it. Jesus Christ. Blah, blah, blah. When you hang out in your mum's basement and you're nothing but a keyboard warrior, you're probably not going to get laid. Cause effect. True. Going to the gym helps you. This is JBB again. Going to the gym helps you to change the way you think about yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody should be working out, right? I think that's every guy certainly should be working out, and every woman should be doing some form of exercise program now. I think that's a non-negotiable. I don't see why anybody isn't doing it. I always find it hard to understand when I work with guys and they're not working out. And it's not about being like hench. It's not about like being huge. I mean, Jesus, you know. But it is about staying in shape and the psychological effects. You know, I'm doing a lot of like, I'm doing boxing training at the moment, right? So I'm getting kind of lean, I'm getting more shredded, we're doing loads of cardio. It's really, really great. I did a really hard session this morning, doing sessions every morning this week, super, super full on. You feel great, you feel pumped. So there's the aspects of the physique, of course, but much more than that is the mental aspect of it. So yes, 100%, you should be going to the gym. This guy who wrote the letter to Sweet Daddy Matt Walsh should absolutely be going to the gym. And if he isn't, he needs to get in there immediately. Or at least, start doing some exercises at home, calisthenics or whatever. Raging Tomato says, well, he's not really wrong, but most women aren't attracted to guys who don't at least take care of themselves. True, absolutely. You've got to take care of yourself. You really have. Let me just have a look and see what else. There was something else we wanted to have a look at here. Maybe we can have a look at a quick Ben Shapiro, actually. Ben Shapiro dating advice. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or if you've got any comments, please put them into the chat. We'll be running for a little bit longer here today. And tomorrow, very excitingly, I have my first call-in. And our caller is going to be a lovely lady called Eva, who is an OnlyFans girl, and she works in the adult entertainment industry. So we're going to be talking to her about that industry and what it's like dating in that industry and what she thinks about female sexuality and monogamy or non-monogamy and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure that you join me tomorrow for that. It's going to be from 2 p.m. UK time, which is 9 a.m. EST. Just did a little bit of a mental calculation there. Okay, right, let's have a quick look at this then. So this is from the Daily Wire. Also, Mr. Shapiro, let's hear what he has to say about dating. He's doing a call-in show here, which is cool. And obviously, if you want to call in like this and ask me questions, you're absolutely able to do that. As I said, put a comment below, DM me on Twitter or on Instagram at RealTroyFrancis, or you can email me troy@realtroyfrancis.com, and we'll have a chat and we'll get you on the show. Okay. Anyway, with that being said, let's see what Mr. Shapiro has to say about dating. Here we go. Hold on one second.
Cameron in Alabama, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Cameron.
Hey, Ben. I just want to say first off that you're one of my inspirations, and I really enjoyed
Sweet Daddy Ben.
Your Right Side of History book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
My question for you today is going to be off a little bit of the coronavirus topic, get on to a little bit more of a cultural level. What is your view on what's your advice for someone like my age? I'm 27 years old, and we're living in sort of what I believe is a relaxed sex culture. What is your what is your advice on that too? Because I feel like you said a long time ago at Young Americans Foundation that people use sex as it being disposable, and I'm just curious, what's your advice for someone in my age now in the dating world?
Well, my advice is use sex as being disposable. Just have a bit of fun. What's the big deal? I mean, the problem with this worldview that is espoused by the likes of Ben and Matt and these people is that it is very joyless. It is very, clearly coming from their religious and political orientation. We can see why. But there's not much room for anything else, I mean, there's not much room for fun and just enjoyment and the expression, all that kind of thing. It all has to be, it's all very calculated and it's all very moving towards this specific life plan that you have. They would argue, well, that's the right thing. But it kind of depends, because if marriage is screwed, as it looks like it is, and we've got plenty of evidence to support that, then really, why are you working towards that end anyway, if it may well not work out for you? Wouldn't it be better, arguably, thought experiment, just to go out there, have fun, responsibly, of course, have a great time, and to hell with the consequences? Why wouldn't that be better? Why do we have to, it's a sex-indulgent environment? Why is that such a bad thing?
Obviously, right now, it's not a good idea because of the coronavirus, but in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that I have never seen a better attempt to dissuade casual sexual encounters than coronavirus. It's pretty. if that was God's plan, I'm not sure I like the plan, God, but It's effective. It's very effective. Like human beings just never seeing each other ever again. But in any case, as far as the general tenor, as I've said, if you want to date at these times and you are dating for something more than that, then you really ought to be dating in a religious context, or at the very least in a committed context. And you can do that by simply saying straight up front with the girl that you are interested in a committed relationship, and then tailoring your conversations toward that commitment.
This is the opposite of the advice that I give guys I work with. And the reason is because we live in a world where if you show your cards too quickly, it's going to put off a lot of women, okay? If you sit down with a woman on a first date and say, I'm looking for a committed relationship and all of this, a lot of the time, she's going to run a mile. She's going to block you. She's going to ghost you. She's not going to respond to your messages the next day, okay? That may not be how we want it to be, but that's kind of how it is, because if you appear to be too needy, if you appear to be pushing the agenda too quickly, that is going to put a lot of women off. Because remember, as human beings, we always like those things we can't quite get hold of, okay? Particularly women in this day and age, because they have so many guys jumping into their DMs. They have so many options that, you know, it's sort of like if you're just like, hey, I'm here and this is our first date and I want to lock you down, there's a very good chance she's just going to be like, oh, sod that. Especially if she's young, especially if she's attractive, especially if she lives in the West, okay? Now, the only caveat to that is that Mr. Shapiro may well be talking about a woman you meet in a church community or a conservative community where they're going to be more sort of open to this kind of thing. But even then, I think it's not the way that I would operate. It's not the way I advise clients to operate. I think you need to keep your cards closer to your chest, at least for the initial period of the courtship.
Everybody thinks that finding...
I mean, it worked for him because he got married after about 2 days, or he got engaged after about 2 days. But look, I mean, you can't use these outliers as a North Star to guide you through your own life, because these people are outliers. Damn.
TV shows in common, or things you like to do together. Like that's the most important stuff. Here's the truth. 90% of people like TV. 90% of people like Disneyland. 90% of people like long walks on
I don't like TV, really. I don't like Disneyland.
the beach, right?
Long walks on the beach are okay.
Most people have like things that are fun in common, but guess what? Marriage actually and dating, these are not actually times when you spend 90% of your time doing fun stuff. One of the things that I always found weird about shows like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette is they'd be like, oh, the best way to know somebody is to go on a hot air balloon ride with them. And I think like, I have never been ever on a hot air balloon ride with my wife, like ever. Nor are these people, if they ever got married, going to...
What an unromantic sod. I can't believe he's never taken his wife on a hot air balloon. Jesus Christ.
Spend more than one day out of presumably the next 60 years in a hot air balloon. Like, why in the world are you tailoring all of these dates to like things that will never happen again, nor would they ever happen in real life?
I kind of agree with this, actually. There is a load of nonsense talked about this kind of thing. Yes, you're right. The day-to-day nature of a relationship, a real-life relationship between two people, a long-term relationship, is not about hot air balloons. It's not about going to these cute places. It's not about going on these wonderful holidays. It's about the grim reality, and he talks about it in a second, it's about the grim day-to-day reality of normal life. And this is, I believe, well, let's just hear what he says, and then I'll tell you.
You know what real life is like if you want to date seriously? Real life is you go and you see the person every single day, and you sit next to them when they are working, and you talk with them, and you get lunch with them, and you hang out with them, and
in other words, it's boring as hell.
You go do favors for them, and you get to know them really well. So I dated my wife for about 3.5 months.
Poor woman.
Before we got engaged. We started dating September 5th of 2007, and 2007, and we got engaged on December 22nd.
Interestingly, notice that 2007 is just pre-Facebook, or at least I think Facebook was starting to be a thing then, but it wasn't a big thing. It was pre-Instagram, it was pre-Tinder, it was sort of pre-smartphone. I think I'm correct in saying pre-smartphone. Those things have made a huge difference on the dating scene, okay? He's slipped in there just before any of those things really became a big deal, all right? So worth noting, worth bearing in mind.
2nd of 2007. So whatever that period is, that was our total dating time before we got engaged.
How long? I think he was like 2 weeks or something he had.
Whatever that period is. We got engaged on December 22nd of 2007. So whatever that period is. That was our total dating time before.
Sorry, guys. I just
of
want to.
2007, and September, 2007. You talk with them, and you get lunch with them, and you hang out with them, and you go do favors for them, and you get to know them really well. So I dated my wife for about 3.5 months before we got engaged. We started dating September 5th of 2007, and 2007, and we got engaged on December 22nd of 2007. So
I mean, look, 3 months. Is it just me that is an absolutely insane idea? That's an absolutely crazy thing to do. I mean, it could be just me. I don't know. I'm a boomer. What can I tell you? But it just seems to be absolutely mental that you would know somebody for 3 months and you would go to the step of getting engaged. That seems to me terrible advice. I can't recommend that to anybody. It seems like a terrible, terrible idea. Okay. I was with somebody for 6 months. I say with, I mean, we were dating for 6 months, and then she moved in with me, and even that at the time, we hadn't got engaged or anything like that. She moved in for various reasons. And even then, I was very conscious that this seemed to be very quick. This seemed to be very fast. And lo and behold, it was a complete disaster. That's another story. But the point is, 3 months? Really? You definitely need to spend more time. Because what do you know after 3 months, really? I mean, okay, they were probably both of the same faith. They probably had similar religious and political convictions. So I guess that helps. But even then, I would argue you need to spend more time with somebody if you're considering the hugely consequential act of getting legally married to them. I mean, am I the only one? Maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. But for me, it just seems absolutely nuts. There's no way I would be hanging out with somebody for 3 months and then I'd just be like, yeah, let's get engaged, babe.
whatever that period is. That was our total dating time before we got engaged. And honestly, it was a pretty packed time because I made a commitment after the first couple of weeks when we dated, once every 3-4 days.
So he pretty much decided that this was the direction they were going to go in after a couple of weeks. For a couple of weeks, you don't even know the person. I mean, I just don't understand the mindset. And again, maybe it's because I'm an avoidant. Maybe it's because I'm a degenerate. Maybe it's because I'm a fornicator, as this woman on Twitter says. But to me, it just seems crazy.
4 days. I made a commitment that I was going to go and see her every single day. And so after work, I would go and I would see her every single day. And if she had to work in the library at UCLA, I would literally bring her a meal. And I would sit there and I would do my work on one side of the table. And she would do her work on the other side of the table. And I wouldn't bother her because she had work to do. And then we would take a break for 15 minutes.
And she called security.
And hang out and go back to doing work. Or if she really, needed to focus, I would drop the meal and I would leave. Because you know what? That's kind of like what marriage is. That kind of is what marriage is. I haven't seen my wife at this point for a month.
He's not incorrect, but what he's basically saying here is, right, make the dating process as boring and mundane and mediocre as you possibly can, because that's what it's going to be like forever once you get married. So don't do anything cool or crazy or exciting in the dating period, because that's not what it's going to be like for the next 50 years. So you might as well get used to it. That's kind of the argument, isn't it?
Like, I'm not kidding. For the last month, I've not seen my wife. Since our baby was born, I have not seen her at all. Why? Well, because number one...
Because she's having an affair.
She is keeping...
I'm only joking. Of course, that's not true.
Odd hours because she has to nurse the baby. Number two, I have two other kids. One got the flu. Then a week later, another got the flu, which means I have to keep them both separate from my wife and the baby so the baby doesn't get the flu. So I've seen my wife in the last month for a combined total of approximately 7.2 minutes. But the reason that the relationship can survive that is because I have the security of knowing that life was like that before, and I've spent all sorts of time with her. You know what's the thing we're not doing right now? Going on a hot air balloon. So if you are worried about, dating for commitment, then think about dating for commitment in realistic ways, as opposed to what's the most romantic thing I can think of for every single date? What if I spread a rose petal lane down the middle of Main Street in Disneyland every single, that's not real life.
Yeah.
So make dating more like real life, and then you're more likely to get a partner that you want for real life.
So make dating as boring as possible.
Okay. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Again, you're a real inspiration to me, and I follow the Daily Wire all the time. It's basically one of my main news sources.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Cameron. Really appreciate the call.
Okay, I think that's about it for that. He then goes on to talk about something else, I think. I want to bring up Candace Owens, actually, because Candace has also got some wonderful dating advice. In the meantime, any questions, any comments on this stuff, put them into the chat. I would be interested to know, guys, if you think I'm the one who's crazy here saying that 3 months is just ridiculous. ridiculously short amount of time to know someone before you get engaged. I mean, for me, I maybe it's my degenerate Western metropolitan mindset, but it just seems nuts. It just does. I think you need to do your due diligence at the very least, even if you are going to get married. I mean, personally, I don't think getting married is a good idea for anybody either, but if that is the way you're going to go, you need to kind of know the person. You need to spend a bit more time than 3 months before committing to putting a ring on it. Right, let me just have a look at this. Candice. What's Candice got to say? Here we go. Candice gives dating advice.
Scratching your head looking for the perfect
And you
gift.
won't be shocked to know that her advice is not unsimilar to the other dudes. It also involves getting shacked up extremely quickly. Let's just have a quick look over here in the meantime. Okay. Yep, okay. All right. Well, look, any other comments, any questions, put them into the chat and we will get to them. Right. Let's finish off with a burst of Candice and see what she's got to say. See what her hot takes are on this whole dating thing. Here we go. Volume, please.
Questions about dating. I guess people want me to give them dating advice, so I'm going to answer some of these questions now. When should I start talking to my partner about marriage? I'm probably
immediately
the last person you should ask this to, or maybe the first person you should ask this to. Don't forget, I got engaged after 2 weeks, and when I
so she got engaged. She beats the record. She wins the Daily Wire record here for getting shacked up into serious commitment in the shortest time possible. So after, what did she say, 2 weeks, she got engaged.
When I say after 2 weeks, I mean I met my husband, and then I was engaged 2 weeks later to him.
She also says a little bit later that they didn't even kiss until after they were engaged. I mean, I can't even, call me naive, but I can't even imagine how that process goes, that you're kind of hanging out with somebody for like 2 weeks and hey, should we get engaged? And you guys haven't even made out yet. I mean, it just seems very odd to me. And that's even if you're looking for a traditional, you want to get married, you want to settle down, all those kinds of things. I'm not saying you don't have to be a degenerate playboy. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but you don't have to do that. But the point I'm making is that this just seems very rushed from my angle.
I'm a big believer in not wasting any time. I know, like, there's, I guess, now
well, obviously
some modern wisdom. You wait 2 years and then you start bringing up engagement, but that's 2 years of your life. You're not getting any younger. Women are definitely have to pay attention, especially if you want children. So I think that if what you're looking for in a relationship is eventually marriage and kids, you should feel comfortable talking about that right away. It doesn't mean that the marriage and the kids and engagement has to happen today, but it does let you know that you're dating somebody that is a serious individual and is not here to just Netflix and chill, as the kids are saying these days. What questions to ask on the...
She's not wrong, is she? I mean, I think if you are looking for those things, and if you're a woman and you're looking for those things, yeah, you should drop it in. Maybe not on the first date, but you should kind of find a way to drop it into the conversation without making it sort of like, right, what are we here for? Do you want to get married? But you want to kind of, I suppose, fairly early on, put that out there because you want to try and figure out, is this dude who you're on the date with the kind of guy who is actually looking for those things as well? But the problem you've got is that guys will lie, or even if they don't outwardly lie, they're going to conceal their intentions. They're going to Robert Greene it and conceal those intentions because if they want to get laid, if they want to get into your pants, they're not going to just blurt out, no, I don't want any of that crap. What are you talking about, woman? They're going to conceal that for a period of time. And, then you might end up having sex. You guys catch feelings. And then you're into this thing that Candice is talking about, which is you're dating for ages and you're not getting where you want it to be. So she's not wrong about that.
The first date, how did you know so soon with your husband? Okay, 2 different questions. With my husband, it was really weird. I just looked at his face and I knew I was going to marry him. It's the most bizarre thing in the entire world. Like, it was his face. I don't know if I've seen it in a dream, but I was like, that's my husband.
Was it his bank balance as well?
No questions asked. It was like a poll that I can't even explain. It was almost scientific. In terms of questions that you should ask on a first date, definitely
How much money do you make?
figure out what they're looking for. I think that a lot of times men will be quite honest about that, and even if they're not honest to your face, they won't text you after that and just, it'll like.
I mean, this is a very a very normie approach to dating, which is not one I recommend to clients, because in the first instance, what you're looking to do is to spark and cement attraction. Okay, so that attraction needs to be ignited, and then you want to basically move it towards getting intimate, having sex, so that then you've cemented this bond between the two of you, okay? That needs to be the first thing. And I'm not saying, oh, it's all about sex, just rush into the bedroom, whatever. But the reality is, in today's brutal dating marketplace, if you're a guy and you are dating these women and, before she slept with you, you're not really even on her radar. I mean, you are slightly, but she's got so many guys hitting her up. She's got so many different options out there, okay? So you haven't solidified anything until you guys have been intimate. Okay, so I think the idea of sitting down on the date and getting into all of this other stuff about, well, what are you looking for in 5 years' time? Where do you see yourself? And that it's like a job interview. It's not particularly sexy. It's the way most normie people do this. But then, as the guy, you're putting yourself up to be rejected on boyfriend criteria, because she's now assessing you as a boyfriend rather than as a short-term lover. And ironically, it can actually be somewhat easier to be classed as the short-term lover. She's like, okay, I'll have sex with this guy. I'm not sure he'd be a good long-term process. But once you guys have had sex and then you hang out and then the feelings start to grow, it's easier to transition that into becoming her boyfriend if you want to have a long-term relationship, or you decide that actually you do really like her. It's easier to transition from that than presenting yourself as the sort of beta, dependable provider guy who wants to marry her, and then she goes, well, yeah, okay, but he's not quite up to scratch, so I think I'll leave him, right? So it's not. I wouldn't say this is a good strategy for men, but I do think actually for women, you probably should at least put it out there if you're now looking for something a bit more serious, because hopefully the guy's going to take the hint and be honest about that and not string you along. I doubt it, but fingers crossed.
That they're just kind of looking to play around. So you should ask questions that give you the answers you're looking for. If you're somebody that wants a serious relationship, you should ask that individual, are you looking for a serious relationship? Are you looking to commit, or are you just kind of looking to date around? As I said before, if it's guys that are just looking to date around, it's a total and utter waste of your time. I don't think there's any reason at all for any women in the modern age to stick around with the guy that's not looking for anything serious.
Well, unless they're not looking for anything serious as well, of course.
What was the worst piece of dating advice that you received, and did you follow it? Oh gosh, well, I feel that anytime you are dealing with women that have this sort of flamboyant, oh, just have fun, just do whatever, like it totally doesn't matter, like it does matter. It actually does matter. And I think that when I was younger, there was all this encouragement coming from various sources that, like, to be a woman in the modern age means to sleep around, to date, to be like a guy. It doesn't matter. You're going to have no feelings. You will have feelings. I mean, I think, hooking up, dating, cuddling, all of that is inherently something that inspires you to have feelings. Oxytocin, for example, as they call it, the cuddle hormone, that's a real thing. And so when people are trying to tell you that you're going to outthink that and it's not going to matter and you can just have a casual relationship with a guy, I think it's the worst piece of advice you can possibly give a young woman. In the end, it just ends up with them being hurt. Where to meet strong conservative...
No! Commercial break. Hold on, guys. Here we go.
Man, non-Instagram. I am not being funny when I say that. I'm always very suspect when guys are very into social media. I think that...
Oh, damn.
Psychologically, everything that's on the internet is almost like soft porn. It's actually something that I've talked about with my husband, and it's not good if guys are constantly looking at, I guess, advertisements for different women. And I think it's the reason why we have men in the past that seem to be so focused on their families, and men today who kind of feel like, oh, well, look, Tinder, I can just swipe to the left, or I can buy a different brand, as if they're shopping for cars.
Well, the top tier of men, yes. But not 80% of men, because they're not getting any action on Tinder.
In different makes in different years. So I think that depending on, how religious you are, you can definitely meet a good person in church.
Yeah, but a quarter of those marriages still break up.
But in any sort of conservative institution, I know people that like to go to political events tend to find others that are drawn by the same interests, and they find that, oh, hey, we have the same thoughts and ideas by going to a conference or something of that sort. So,
yeah, not a bad idea.
If you're interested in conservatism, do conservative activities, and you're likely to draw a conservative to yourself. What are your thoughts on saving kissing for marriage? I would say that I would not expect people to save kissing for marriage, but it is funny because me and my husband did not have our first kiss until after we were engaged.
You see? Nuts. How did that even happen? How did he... I mean, it's just... It just seems very odd. I mean, so he had to make this leap of faith to assume... I mean, she must have made it very clear that she was into him, because it's kind of like the first kiss sort of cements the fact that you guys are attracted to one another, right? Before that, there's this sort of unknowability about it, which can be nice because that's where the tension builds up in the early phases of when you've met somebody and there's attraction there, and it's like, okay, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And then the kiss sort of... at the first kiss, you guys are kind of both acknowledging, right, okay, this is on, we are attracted to one another, right? But how you can, before that point, say, oh, by the way, will you marry me? And then you guys kiss. Unless what happened is that he proposed, or he said, let's get engaged, and she said yes, and maybe they kissed then. Maybe that's what she means, but it just, I don't know. And this is after they've known each other 2 weeks. I mean, they literally, they know basically nothing about each other, okay? Well, she knew that he was from, I believe, a very good family, and I believe quite wealthy. I'm not saying that played into it in any way whatsoever. But, beyond that, what did they really know about each other? Not very much. So it seems to me incredible that you would make a life commitment to somebody after 14 days. But what can I say? What do I know about it?
So, I mean, post-engagement, but that was just kind of because we got engaged so quickly. But no, I don't think it's a problem for people to be kissing before they're married. I think that's, I don't judge you if you want to wait to kiss until you're married. But I don't think it's a bad thing to kiss someone before you get married. What are your suggestions for a relationship in a rut with a lot of frustrations? My suggestion, and this would actually go back to probably the best piece of dating advice I ever received, was from Bruce Jenner.
Slightly surprising.
On a very early season of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, he was talking to Kourtney about her rut of a relationship with Scott Disick, and we know how that turned out. And he said, when you're dating somebody, that's as good as it's ever going to get. And what he meant by that was that a lot of people have this idea that your relationship's going to get into a rut and it's going to be weird and it's going to be bad. But then once you get married or once you have a kid, it's going to be happily ever after. And so many women kind of hold this perspective. It's like, just as soon as I get the ring, it's going to be better. And that's not true. I think when you're dating, that is kind of the high, the emotional high, the, oh my God, this is amazing. And so if you're starting to see that start to taper off and you're not married yet, you're just in a relationship, I'd pay attention to those signs because you may not have found that person that you're meant to do life.
So when you're dating Ben Shapiro, that's the high, and he's bringing you sandwiches in the library. I mean, it's kind of... but she is right, though. The dating part is the high, or the honeymoon period, okay? The bit at the beginning is the high, because when people first meet, when people first get together, that attraction is running through your veins, it's pumping, the lust is at its height. That is the good bit, okay? After that... we all know after a few years, maybe a year, a couple of years, whatever, it starts to taper off. And then you're left with what Ben was talking about, which is the mundane reality of daily life, which is, not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's just how life is. He's right. I mean, people do just basically work and do the household chores, do some shopping, and then go to bed. I mean, that's sort of how most people's life is. It's not all about hot air balloons and all of this kind of thing. It's just... what are you going to do, right? I mean, this is the challenge with long-term relationships, because it does become mundane, okay? And the issue then that you've got is that people will look to other areas. We've got Instagram, we've got all these different venues where you can meet people. There's all this analysis comparison and analysis paralysis going on, and it's a very unforgiving landscape out there as far as creating a long-term relationship is concerned, I would suggest. So for me personally, this Tradcon advice, it all seems to be coming from people who basically got married within the first 2 minutes of meeting their partner. They're all still married at the moment, so you can say, well, Obviously, they're doing something right. I guess they are up until now, but I would argue that these people are outliers. I don't think it's a very good strategy to, you know, I don't think it's a good strategy to just check up with somebody after you've known them for a couple of weeks. It seems like a very bad idea. I think you need to vet them for a period of time at least. Marriage anyway, for men, as we know, is extremely risky because if it goes wrong, and it does tend to go wrong a lot, you can have half of your assets seized. If you've got kids, you can have trouble with getting access to those kids. It can be very painful emotionally and psychologically. There's a lot of like downsides to this, okay? And 70% of divorces are initiated by women. So you've got to think very carefully before getting into something like this. And my issue with these Tradcon people is not that necessarily like the life they've chosen is wrong or anything like that, but it's just that they're kind of encouraging. It's like, yeah, bro, just get on with it. This is what you need to do. And there seems to be no acknowledgement of the potential downsides of this at all, you know, whatsoever. And if there is any acknowledgement, it's just, well, you're a weak male, you're not a leader, you're a beta, you couldn't make it work, it's your fault. Okay, we've got some comments here. Oh no, you're not jumping on the bringing on OnlyFans girls on train, are you? So tired of that content in this community. Oh man, you can never be tired of OnlyFans girls. What are you talking about? Jesus. Since you started making content with Tiffany, did you find being more knowledgeable on attraction? Did your Riz improve? I mean, I think you not necessarily. I mean, I think you can learn something from everybody, and certainly working with Tiffany Fox, former adult entertainment star. She's a YouTuber now. We've done a course together called Magnetic Sexual Confidence, which if you go on my Twitter or if you go on my Instagram, you'll find details about. Yeah, I mean, obviously working with her, I've learned things from that, for sure. But I learned things from everybody that I work with. I think doing a course with her has been great because we've had it both from the male perspective and the female perspective. We'll hopefully get Tiffany on here at some point and we can have a conversation with her about, you know, the adult entertainment industry and everything she knows about you know, all of this stuff. Hoping to see a show on good game advice because this is anti-game and it's getting in my brain. Are you talking about the conservative guys, I assume? 3 months is not long enough to see a person stop pretending being someone else. Yeah, I agree. I think 3 months is ridiculous. Yeah, okay. Why is it important to ask someone's dating intentions up front? I mean, again, I think that's kind of anti-game, really. You know, you're sitting there on a date, so what are your dating intentions? I think it's just a bit abrupt. I think it's in the early stages, it's a bit of a dance, right? The courtship in the early stages, the seductive dance, right? You need to take it a little bit slowly. You need to keep your cards closer to your chest, in my view, okay? Particularly with the way that the dating scene is now and the way that women will discard a dude if they think he's a bit of a puss, okay? Which she will if you seem to be too keen to get commitment too quickly. Anyway, with all of that being said, please do subscribe to the channel. Please press the notifications bell as well so that you know when new videos are coming up. Give this video a like. Share it. That would be wonderful. Put a comment beneath. And if there's anything you want me to cover in these videos, again, then put the comment beneath and we will get into it in a subsequent show. And yeah, it's been great. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we will see you again very soon. Bye-bye. Actually, I'm going to say one more thing. Join me tomorrow, 14.00, 2 o'clock UK time, 9 a.m. EST, because we're going to have an OnlyFans lady on here, and we're going to be talking about female sexuality and OnlyFans and how to date when you're in that industry and all of that other good stuff. It's going to be great. Raging Tomato or whoever it was on here, don't worry about the OnlyFans. I mean, listen, man, you can never tire of OnlyFans girls. It's always gold content. Tomorrow's going to be great. She's a cool girl. She's articulate, and we're going to learn a lot. So make sure that you join me tomorrow. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.